Henri Richard gets a ride to the boards from Horton.
Everybody talks about his strength. When he pinned you up against the boards, you were only leaving when Tim gave you permission to leave.
He's the strongest man I ever saw in a hockey rink. So no one would fight him because he would just bear hug him and that would be the end of it. Literally, he looked like he should be in a Muscle Builders magazine.
I always said that if they wanted to move the Gardens, Tim would get one end and you could get 40 other guys at the other end and then they could move it. He could handle one end by himself.
He was a strong guy. He knew, you have to push guys away from the front of the net and the stamina. And to tell you the truth, I think he just wanted to find a way to use the energy up.
I don't know if there was ever a stronger player. Physically stronger player. Tim, he's a guy that was a great defensive defenseman. I enjoyed the way he played. Could shoot the puck.
He could break a door down like that. He could snap it like, and if he didn't, you know what I mean? If he was saying, Frank, I know you're in there, Frank, all of a sudden, boom. They paid for more doors, you know what I mean? And then you'd have to join him, right? The guy breaks the door down, you're not gonna go in and say, hey, jerk, you know what I mean? You say, well, wait a minute, what are we drinking here? I don't like scotch. You're drinking scotch, right?
At Game 5 in Montreal, I was dying in the third period, but Timmy was out there just still doing it, getting it done, and I watched that. You think you're tired, you're not. You got more left in the tank, and we learned a lot from that.
Most people know the name Tim Horton from a coffee cup. But long before the donuts and the drive-thrus, this name meant something entirely different inside every NHL arena in North America. Tim Horton was a defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs, 5 feet 10 inches tall, over 210 pounds of pure compressed muscle, built not in a gym, but in the mines and construction sites of northern Canada. 24 seasons, 1,445 games. And this, from the man many called the greatest hockey player who ever lived, Gordie Howe. Tim Horton was the strongest man in the history of hockey. Nobody could come close. So what exactly made him that terrifying? In the era of the original six, hockey was a different game. No visors, no instigator rule, no protection for the man who started a fight. You threw your fists, you took your punishment, and you came back for more. Derek Sanderson of the Boston Bruins was exactly that kind of player. Loud, provocative, and completely unafraid of consequences. One night, he decided to go after Tim Horton. He skated in hard, threw his weight forward, and waited for Horton to swing back. Horton did not swing. Instead, he simply opened his arms and wrapped them around Sanderson in what witnesses described as a bear hug. Sanderson, trapped and desperate, bit through Horton's jersey and into his shoulder trying to break free. Horton did not let go. The pressure from those arms crushed 2 of Sanderson's ribs without a single punch being thrown. Sanderson later admitted, "I felt like I was being squeezed by a hydraulic press. That was the moment I genuinely feared for my life on the ice." Coach Punch Imlach of the Toronto Maple Leafs once said, "If Tim had one mean bone in his body, he could have ended careers. He chose not to. That was the only reason anyone survived him." Bench-clearing brawls were not rare in the NHL during the 1960s. They were expected. 20 men spilling onto the ice, fists flying, linesmen overwhelmed. It was chaos by design. And in the middle of every single one of those brawls, you would find Tim Horton. Not throwing punches, ending the fight. Horton's method was simple and completely terrifying. He would skate into the center of the chaos, reach out both arms, grab 2 separate players who were actively fighting each other, one in each hand, and lift them both off the ice. He would then carry them toward the bench, tucked under his arms or held by the collar, the way a parent carries a pair of misbehaving children. His face, by every account, was completely calm throughout. Witnesses and surviving footage confirm this happened more than once. The most disturbing detail is not the act itself. It is that even the most feared enforcers in the league reconsidered their choices when Horton was nearby. Bobby Hull, who spent summers on a farm throwing hay bales and considered himself exceptionally strong, described the experience of hitting Horton directly. "I always thought I was tough after a summer of hard work, but running into Horton felt like trying to push a brick wall. He had a kind of strength that did not belong to this world." Tim Horton did not build his body in a weight room. In the 1940s and 50s, NHL salaries were not enough to live on through the summer. Players found work wherever they could. Horton went back to northern Canada, to the construction sites and mining operations of a region where physical labor was simply a condition of survival. Co-workers at those sites recalled details that are difficult to believe without context. Horton could palm a full cement bag with one hand and carry it without strain, an act that requires grip and forearm strength far beyond any standard measure. He was reported to have carried railway ties alone that typically required 2 or 3 grown men to move. A photograph taken when Horton was 18 years old already shows the shoulders and arms of a man who looked carved from something permanent. When he returned to training camp each autumn, teammates stopped and stared. Horton himself explained his philosophy simply: if you cannot beat them in an alley, you cannot beat them on the ice. That summer strength translated directly onto the rink. Opposing forwards described being pushed off the puck by a single Horton arm as though they had skated into a stationary object. In March of 1955, during a game against the New York Rangers, defenseman Bill Gadsby delivered a body check that referee Bill Chadwick later described as the hardest hit he had witnessed in his entire officiating career. Horton went down immediately. He was unconscious before he hit the ice, bleeding from both his mouth and his ear. The diagnosis was devastating: a broken right leg and a shattered jaw. Gadsby, the man who threw the check, was genuinely shaken. He later admitted, "I thought I had killed him. I truly believed he was dead on the ice." Doctors predicted Horton's career was finished. He was hospitalized for weeks, fed through a tube, his body held in traction. 1 year later, Tim Horton was back on the ice, not diminished, stronger. He then played 486 consecutive games, a Toronto Maple Leafs record that has never been broken. That sequence did not happen because Horton avoided punishment. It happened because his body processed damage that would have ended other careers and simply continued. The phrase "impossible to destroy" was not a metaphor when people applied it to Tim Horton. It was an observation. On February 20th, 1974, Tim Horton was 44 years old and still one of the most effective defensemen in the NHL, playing for the Buffalo Sabres. Before that evening's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, a puck struck him directly in the face during practice. His jaw swelled badly. He could barely eat. He could barely speak. He played anyway. During the game, he took another blow to the same jaw. By the third period, the pain had exceeded what any normal person could endure, and he sat out. After the final whistle, he was named one of the 3 stars of the game. Then, in a condition that would have put most men in a hospital bed, Horton got behind the wheel of his white Di Tommaso Pantera, a high-powered Italian sports car, and drove alone toward Buffalo through the night. On the Queen Elizabeth Way, at close to 180 kilometers per hour, the car left the road. Horton, who was not wearing a seatbelt, was thrown more than 37 meters from the wreck. Post-mortem examination revealed a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit, alongside both stimulants and sedatives in his system. Teammate Gilbert Perreault later said, "Tim never believed anything could stop him. We all believed it too." Tim Horton played 24 seasons. He won 4 Stanley Cup championships with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He set records that still stand. But none of those numbers fully explain what made him different. What made him different was this: the most physically gifted players of his generation, men who feared almost nothing, quietly admitted that Tim Horton existed on a level they could not reach and did not fully understand. Gordie Howe said it plainly: Tim Horton was the strongest man in the history of hockey. Nobody could come close. Every morning, millions of people across North America pick up a coffee cup with his name on it. Very few of them know what that name once meant on the ice. Now you do. If Tim Horton's story left an impression on you, drop a comment below and tell us, which moment surprised you the most? Your support means everything to this channel. Like this video and subscribe so you never miss another story like this one.